Breakout Shot, Chapter 5, Odin's Last Game. The next day Billy makes his way back to the pool hall, walking quickly and at times almost running, down an alley where a group of hoods lean and watch him go past without looking away. And he goes on and they ignore him, except to hold their dead-eyed gazes. Then out and up the main drag, and there are 2 lanes of cars passing in either direction, and people out on the sidewalks, hustling or going along about their way, or having a smoke, and all of them talking and hollering. There are all types of signs up and down, emboldened in colors, some lit up in old yellowing incandescent, and others glowing in new neon, and under posters and signs in the storefront windows, mannequins with hats and coats, blue and green and yellow and red and shimmering, and on the sidewalks beneath their illuminated and fixed positions, where people huddled under the heavy smoke that hangs in the excrescent light. He passes through the crowd out front and into the pool hall, and Odin is already playing. Tong sits in the back shadow holding court, and a smoke cloud hovers there, and he seems to hide yet sneer from behind it. For the second night in a row, Billy and Odin play on into the night. There is a crowd in the pool hall. They play in the shine of the grinning teeth and chatterheads coming together to whisper who was on, who was running hot, who would win, who was best. Billy lights up the crowd, swaying and swooning in the half-light. He plays to them, sinking another shot and blowing the dust off the ferrule end, spinning the cue through the air behind his back and playing it like a guitar, kicking his leg. "You win again. Good game, Billy," said Odin. Billy was back. He felt it in the current of the world that extended from him. "He's back," someone said. "He never left," said another. During this all, Tong sat quiet in the background, then came forward towards the table and stood with his arms crossed as the crowd began to thin in the early hours. Then it was nearly empty and Odin had regained control, and Tong stood close. Billy leaned against the wall, and Odin snapped another wicked break and began to run through the rack. Odin dropped shots Billy thought he would surely miss, that even Tong thought he would miss. The ball seemed to roll at perfect angles and with an exact spin, as though drawn by a great attractor, every shot dropping into the pocket with the same clack, as if he controlled causality itself. When he's playing pool he does, Billy thought. The thought rebounded through his mind. Odin wins again and again. He moves sure-steady, circling the table as if astride on a stage, as if bounding through an ether, and it is in the morning, with the sun about to rise, when Odin steps away for a smoke and offers one to Billy. "Let's smoke to this great game we've played, my good friend," Odin said. He took Billy aside, with Tong watching from the shadow at the room's edge. An impenetrable shadow, inky and soot-mired, even in the broad light of day. "A battle we have had, you and I," Odin said. "We came to play, and no one can say that we did not. Truly a great clash. But I am the younger man, maybe. Maybe you are the greatest, and I play better for longer. I am very good, you see, but time, it carries us away." "What are you getting at?" Billy asks, frowning. "Maybe I have the stamina, and the night will only get later. Come on, Billy. It's time to play another day, my friend. Why take this further? There are other games for you to play, many games for you to win." Odin gestures out towards the street. Tong watches, smoking. What the fuck is he saying to him? Tong says to no one. Someone opens the door and it hangs open there. In the sky is a dusk-dusted haze. Billy thought of all the other nights and games of pool he had played. Nights when it seemed the world spun on his Q-furl end. He looked at Odin. "God damn, Odin, are you a great pool player," he said. Odin smiles wide and takes a drag on his cigarette. "For now, yes, this is true," said Odin. "I'll see you around, kid," Billy says, and lifts his smoking hand to Odin, thanking him for the cigarette with a silent nod. He turns and walks out of the pool hall and walks through the cool night that has begun to descend on the streets. He smokes the cigarette Odin had given him and thought it might be his last, as he walks directionless through the gloomy city. Tong was there when Odin turned back towards the pool room. "What did you say to him?" "I told him it was a good game," Odin said. "When I found you, Odin, I told you there would be a purpose you were to serve," said Tong. "I wanted to beat this man at the game he loved, and not beat him simply for pride, but to see him totally defeated. I wanted to see the light behind his eyes disappear." "He admitted I was best," said Odin. "He understood. He was a man who was the greatest no longer on top of that hill. He had been humbled enough." "Not enough for me," said Tong. "Do you understand how disappointed I am in your performance?" Odin blew smoke into Tong's face and poked him in the chest. "Hey, buddy, I played the best pool of my life. Nobody has ever played so well in this shithole. Nobody could beat that guy but me." Tong reaches and grabs Odin by the collar of his leather jacket and shakes him back and forth, and Odin keeps the cigarette dangling in his mouth, laughing. "Easy there, buddy," he says, the cigarette stuck to his lower lip. Tong tightens his grip, pulling the lapels of the leather jacket round his neck. Odin clenches the cigarette between his teeth tight through the filter. He smiles at Tong and spits the cigarette into Tong's face, and the cherry end bounces off his nose and onto the floor. Tong pushes forward and slams Odin through the door and into the street. Odin gets up scrambling over the pavement and begins to run, rushing, aware now that his life is at stake, the greatest stakes he has ever played. There was no chance Tong would let anyone who had spit a lit cigarette into his face live another day. Tong looked to his men, who chased down Odin, catching up to him almost immediately, stomping and dragging him back down towards the alley. He cries out and writhes in their firm grips. "Pathetic," one of them says. "Time to die now," says the other. Odin cries out in a way that makes the two men laugh, and tries one more desperate attempt to shake them loose and fight them off. But it comes nowhere close to working, and the two men laugh again at him. In the alley was a car, and it was darker now. The alley was cloaked, and Odin was gasping in horror, unable to make noise, just gasping for the sound as they dragged him careless, as though he were already dead. They dragged him through the shine glare of the headlights, along the passenger side doors, gravel cutting into his face and his right eye as his face drags. One of the men grabs a roll of duct tape out of the trunk and pulls a strip of tape and rips and wraps it around Odin's hands, and then pulls another long strip and rips and wraps it around his ankles, and the other man lifts him into the car and shuts the door. Odin screams, but it has begun to rain, and they could barely hear him over the rainfall and the city sounds. Terrible thing, said one of the men. Yes, a shame, said the other. He will make a good pincushion. So it will be. His fate is sealed, his destiny foretold, his course set, his story written. The two men laughed, but after that only stood silently in the rain, both of them now more focused on their surroundings than each other, eyes darting back and forth, shifty-eyed in the heavy rain. In the late hours Tong came out, his hat brimmed low against the rainfall. He looked to the men and they went back into the pool hall, and Tong got into the car and drove down the alley and turned out onto the street. Tong spoke to Odin loudly so he could hear him over the sound of the car moving through the slanting rain. You took away my fate, you see, by changing his. I was to see him totally destroyed, beaten completely. Tong waved his hand through the air. Committing suicide in a motel bathroom, let's say. Another enemy of mine viciously defeated. You seemed like friends, said Odin. In a way we are. It's just I want to destroy my friend and watch him jump off the bridge. You're a sick fuck, said Odin. Yes, and now I will kill you. Just another victim of mine in a long list I can no longer fully recall. Many of them friends. I am just serving the course of things. My course was set long ago. Tong, listen to me and listen well. You're a sicko freak. Tong grinned at him in the mirror. We will see if you scream out that I am more and that you are wrong, said Tong. In about an hour, when you beg me to take your life. Odin was quiet then, but not out of fear, but out of defeat, and Tong knew it. Resigning himself to the end now, Tong drove in the silent darkness towards the impending horrific violence that waited for Odin somewhere in the black night ahead. Tong pulled off the road and stopped the car in front of a chain-link gate. He got out of the car and unlocked the gate and pushed the gate open. He got back into the car and drove up the gravel drive to a small utility building and put the car in park. Odin brakes now, screaming and crying and thrashing around the back of the car as best he can, with his hands and feet taped together, smashing his head into the glass window. Motherfucker, you son of a bitch, bastard, piece of fucking shit, motherfucking scum, he screamed, voice cracking. Tong watched him grinning and opened up the back door. Odin, spitting and screaming obscene, fell out onto the gravel road. Tong pulls Odin up by his hair and drags him screaming down the embankment and through the door of the small utility building. Tong had access to this county utility service station and would bring his victims out to this dark, empty site to torture and kill them. He liked how quiet it was. One night Tong wanted to test if he could hear screams from the road past the gate. He lit a cigar, puffing the cherry into a red glow, before he handed it to his underling. Look at your watch and note the time. Wait 2 minutes, then put this out in his eye, Tong said. The man tied to the chair began to scream. Tong couldn't remember the man or what he had done, but he could remember his pitched and frantic screaming, his begging pathetic and sobbing pitiful. Then just please, 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 his voice cracking and guttural, horrifically pained and like a suffering animal in a trap. Tong went out to the gate and waited. He waited for what seemed like a long time. He lit and smoked a cigarette, and there was only the silence and his breathing and exhaling of smoke. He went back into the utility building, and the man tied to the chair was slumped forward, the gory and smoldering cigar on the floor before him. Tong drags Odin into the center of this bare concrete room, the floor and walls stained with old blood now black. He chains Odin into a heavy chair in the middle of the room, parts of it wooden and other parts metal screwed into the wood, as if the wood was being consumed by the metal itself, growing heavier each day. He puts his cigarette out in Odin's eye, and Odin screams and yells only one word, "Please, please," as Tong pushes the smoldering cigarette butt into his eye. Then Tong pulls out a small knife and cuts and pulls Odin's arm at the joint, and the flesh splits like a twisted chrysanthemum, and the flowering bud of flesh sprays warm, slippery blood through the air. Odin screams and lets out panicking, incoherent, "Help, please, no, no," struggling in the heavy chair but never moving it, only writhing impotently against its burden. Tong twists deeper and Odin screams. Tong pulls the knife out and blood glistens through the air. He turns away from Odin and wipes the blade with a rag. Odin is groaning low now, head bent down, chin on his chest, drooling blood and muttering. His face is pale, and his yellow teeth are clenched. He mutters fast and frantic like a manic auctioneer. Tong could not understand what he said. Tong knew he was close to dead now. There was so much blood all over the floor. Odin's eyes drifted back and his neck went back, and he either passed out or died. Tong was not sure. Tong stood there for a moment. He thought about long ago. He could see himself there in the dirt, and the jungle all around, and the sounds of the insects, and the voices yelling all around him, movement and disorder, panic in the hot and dense air, the smell of fuel on the air, chaos moving through the leaves, souls pounding the dirt. Then he went out into the cool night and left Odin alone to die. He walked along a path he had found long ago and went out to the edge and looked out across the valley. Tong could feel it on the edges, some crazy bullshit about to happen. The rumors, the friction with George, all culminating towards some clusterfuck. It was like he could see the future, the sense for it. It had kept him alive many times over the years of killing and pushing and counting and waiting. He looked out across the valley before him, all of it under moonlight and stars. Orion and his sword, the Dipper lifting up infinity. He smoked and watched the sky for a falling star. Nothing in the sky moved, but he knew it anyway. "Terrible Tong," he said aloud to himself as he grinned at the cosmos. He threw his cigarette into the void beneath him, then turned and went. He went past the building and thought of going in to check on suffering Odin, but he did not. When he returns home, he will call someone, wake them up. There is a mess to clean up. Tong drove up the winding roads out of the valley, and in the distance were hills and train yards in the cold moonlight. He hated to leave his killing place. He drove through the darkness in silence, the road winding its way. Then there was the light of the highway stretching out into the distance. He drove along the ramp and sat up straight in the seat, gripping the top of the wheel with his hands, and poised himself as he went back into the maw of the world.